Welcome back to our Backcountry tips. My name is Guy Willett, I'm with Dream Guides. This week we're going to look at some search and rescue equipment and how to use it. So what we're really talking about is our three most important bits of equipment are the shovel, the probe and Avalanche Transceiver. And when we talk about search and rescue equipment, we're really talking about in the event of an avalanche. So first off, let's look at the shovels. You can see here I've got two types of shovel. The one on the right is a all plastic shovel, and the one on the left is an aluminium shovel. The differences are the plastic shovel is lighter but weaker, and the aluminium shovel is a little bit heavier, but it's much more robust. I think it's important that that people use a metal shovel because if you try and dig through avalanche debris that is really set, particularly in the spring, so you imagine you've had a wet slide and then the avalanche comes to a halt and it's all blocky and solid, it's very hard to actually cut through it with a plastic shovel, whereas the metal ones you can actually dig fairly effectively through it. So that's actually pretty crucial really. In powder it doesn't make much difference, but certainly anything that's got a higher moisture content, or stuff in the spring, then a metal one is pretty crucial, and these days these are the ones you're really looking at. So how would we use it? Well, first off, they normally come detachable, so you can have the shovel head and your shovel probe in your rucksack. Make sure you bring both. Personally, I prefer the ones where the handle is just a single unit rather than a collapsible or extendable version. It's just less to go wrong, less to deal with in an emergency. And normally you just have a little button there that you press in so it can slide in and click shut, and that's it. That's all ready to use. Our second piece of equipment we need to bring with us is our probe. We really want it to be at least 2 meters in length because we want to be searching at least down to 2 meters depth in the snow. If you have a longer probe, 3 or 3.5 meters, that's also fine and allows you to probe deeper in the snow. The only disadvantage being that it's slightly more unwieldy and a little bit heavier and a bit more expensive. Personally, I go for around 2.5 meter length avalanche probes. So to use these, to get them set up rather, we just take them out of the bag and we just want to hold our the top end, the non-pointy end, and then basically we just throw the remainder of the probe out, and that'll lengthen it out for us like so. And then we basically pull the cable by the handle and give it a bit of a waggle. It's not dissimilar to a tent pole, and you'll hear it click. So now it's all ready to use. And when I clicked it, what happened is this little clasp pops out and holds it in place. So we just need to make sure that that is in place. Now we're ready to use this as well. Okay, so our third piece of equipment is our Avalanche Transceiver, or PEEP or beeper. And these are also super important. I didn't mention these particularly at the start because it's a common misconception that these are the most important bit of our equipment, but there's good evidence these days that unless you have all three bits of equipment and know how to use them in the event of a search, then the chances of survival for the victim are massively reduced. So really they're all crucial. So here we have two different types, fundamentally different types of transceiver. The one in my left hand is a digital one, and the one on the right is essentially an analog one. The analog ones are lighter, their batteries last much longer, and they're much cheaper, but they are more difficult to learn how to use. They're just as effective in the right hands, but they are more difficult to learn how to use and require more practice and rehearsal. Even as an expert, you need to spend much more time keeping your skills up to be able to search efficiently with them. Much easier to use straight out of the box and with quick reminders are the digital ones. So for our clients and for our guides and for myself, certainly I prefer using the digital ones because they make life easier in the event of a rescue. So how do we put these on? Well, essentially all of them will have an on-off switch, and I'll just show you with this one how I would do that, because while we're turning it on, we also want to check the battery strength. So we just switch from off to on, makes a beep, and we can see it's 82% batteries, which is just fine, and that double beep now shows me that it's transmitting, so that's all on, and it's got sufficient batteries. The different manufacturers will recommend changing the batteries at different levels. As a rule of thumb, I tend to change the batteries when it's down to about 50%. So that's now on. How do I wear it? Well, I need to wear it underneath my my top layer, but above my base layer. It needs to be accessible if in the event of an emergency, so I don't want it under too many layers, but I need it under at least the outer layer so that it won't get pulled off if I'm caught in an avalanche. How might we use one of our transceivers in the event of an emergency in terms of how to find someone? Well, when we're skiing along, then they're all in transmit mode, so they're giving out a signal. So we'll need the remaining members of the party who are going to be searching or helping with the search to turn their transceivers to search mode. Otherwise, when we're searching, we'll pick up our safe colleagues as well. Currently, there isn't anyone around with a transceiver that's on, so it's not picking anything up. But essentially, I'm going to want to split my search into 3 fundamental parts, and the first one is a general grid search. So I need to identify where the avalanche path is and the last known point of our victim. And clearly the victim will not be uphill of where he was last seen, so we can go immediately to where he was last seen, probably mark that point with a ski pole or something similar so we know where we started from, and from that point, you know, we have our transceivers in search mode, and assuming I haven't picked up a signal, then I will want to progress down the slope in a grid fashion, going to within 20 meters of the sides of the avalanche path, or where I feel the extent of where the victim could be. Once I have got a signal, then a digital transceiver is very helpful because it'll give us a direction and a rough distance. And at that point, we can motor really quite quickly along the flux line of the transceiver, as they say, which is a slight curving arc, which is what the transceiver will take us on to get to our victim. And we should see the distance meter counting down, you know, so from maybe 30 meters to 25, 20. And once we get to within a few meters of the victim, I'll stop and I'll change my pattern of search again to do the fine search or a pinpoint search, where I'm doing a kind of a cross search pattern to really narrow down exactly where the victim is. It's important for us to hold our transceiver close to the ground because the victim is going to be buried under the snow. So if the transceiver is reading 2 meters, I could theoretically be standing right above him and he's 2 meters below me in the snow. So it's not just a horizontal plane we're searching in, it's a vertical one as well. Okay, so we're happy that we've established where the victim is using our transceiver. We now want to physically exactly find him, and this is when we use the probe. Because with the transceiver we've probably narrowed it down to within a meter or two, and to save the time digging, we'll use the probe. And as we know, we only have 15 minutes to find all our victims, so time is precious. So if this is the area that we've located our victim in, then this is where we'll start probing. Of course, if there's more than one searcher, then there's no reason why one of the other searchers hasn't already got the probes ready and the shovels ready and that kind of stuff, and they're ready to go immediately. Great, so how do we do it? Well, it's pretty straightforward. We're going perpendicular to the slope and straight down, and we're really just looking at probing as deep as we can. And it can be pretty difficult, and this is actually pretty difficult where I am right here because of all the walking we've done on it, and that can be the same when we're searching an avalanche debris as well, because it can be super solid sort of blocks. Makes it difficult, but essentially you can feel or like here you can see I've actually gone into some mud, so that's definitely gone to the bottom. And if I haven't found the person on that probe, then I'm going to go out in a concentric, ever expanding circle with the magic number 20 centimeters, because I like 20, and it's just easy to remember. He's not in there. 20 centimeters further this way, and probe, another 20 centimeters, nope, another 20 centimeters, nope, and we keep going round and round until we do find them. Now if I found him here, then I'll leave the probe in where I found him, and we'll dig around the probe, and that way in the melee of everything we don't forget exactly where we found him. And remember, we're searching for a buried body which has a much bigger surface area than just the transceiver, so it's a pretty realistic thing to find, and it does feel different. It actually feels similar to turf, so it's a little bit softer, and it's not rock hard, and it's not really easy. And the other thing that we're looking for is not just change of how it feels, but also the change in depth. So if I've been probing all the way up to 2 meters and then suddenly I can only get 60 centimeters in, then there's that height difference might be it as well. As soon as we've found the person, we leave the probe in, and that's when we'll start digging. So how we dig will depend on the steepness of the slope primarily. So if it's flat, we can just dig in a normal manner, like we're digging in the garden. If it's a steeper slope, it's often more effective to dig into the slope horizontally, or more horizontally. So rather than digging down on top of where the victim is going to be, we're going to be slightly downhill and digging into the hill. And the reason for that is it's ergonomically easier to dig that way, and also you actually end up digging less snow, so it's quicker. The prime, our prime objective is to find the victim and make sure that they're breathing. So the most important thing is that we find their head, and that their breathing is our top priority. So this week we looked at the 3 important bits of Avalanche safety equipment and how to use them. So hopefully now you can go away and practice with your own equipment and stay safe.